Koma and Konnichiwa plus Yobaseo. Will here of the POLIT'AI CHI. See the slideshow montage of the video highlights coming up. Perfect lighting. A little behind on this. It's from last week. I'm aware of the flicker issue. I'm working on it. Lost the super duper secret Sicilian cinnamon formula. Say that 5 times fast. Can't get into what that is. Cooking. Sorry. That's it. Anywho, yeah, the video highlights are perfect. There's only one sequence of lighting going on there. There's 4 in this setting. Alright, so follow up to Jemele Hill. Yeah, I'm not too thrilled about that because, you know, Miss McHenry caught on film doing the same thing in a written format, but belittling, you know, a fellow human being. That's what led to her ouster. I mean, somebody who writes what she's written is prone to do that in person to somebody else. So Doug Adler, the man on point tennis-wise, I actually was covering that particular match, believe it or not. It was on the channel before, you know, a bunch of false positive algorithms were allowed to run amok on YouTube. Before I realized what was going on and documented it, made a 221-page dossier on it. I was getting victimized. One algorithm on behalf of one organization, like dinging the tennis highlights that I was doing back then. But the only reason I happened to catch that, and I was like, dude, you're using this terminology in the context of a tennis match? Thus, the reason for the poly rant? Roll it.
It was just all about professional commentary, complimenting Venus Williams' style of play and her tactics, and about right and wrong. And obviously, ESPN acted wrongly and unfairly.
Alright, so that's a little snippet of the video highlights in full coming up, again in perfect lighting, but you know, the reason for the poly rant, that's my sort of introductory little phrase, but not because of him, but on behalf of him. You know, an innocuous statement like that leads to his ouster. I already, you know, brought up the aforesaid Miss McHenry, but something very overt and very noxious as in it's already been spoken about. Don't need to get back into that again. Nothing personal, like leave the, you know, the crossover where sports and politics collide with the experts, former athletes, and politically trained operatives. All right, thanks for watching those silly DUIs while you're out there.
In media. CNN isn't the only cable channel where hosts are getting overtly political. Remember, we've been talking about this all week. ESPN's Jemele Hill. She remains at the network at this hour despite a Twitter tirade in which she labeled President Trump and his supporters as white supremacists. And yet she was not even suspended. And in fact, this is what the ESPN said, tweeting this. ESPN is paying a really big price for its politics and bad programming. This is actually Donald Trump. People are dumping it in record numbers, which is true, and they are firing people or laying them off because of that. Apologize for the untruth, he says. Now, Doug Adler is a former ESPN commentator. He is suing the network after they fired him for using a term called guerrilla, meaning guerrilla warfare, as not gorilla, meaning a gorilla animal in a zoo, to describe the aggressive way in which Venus Williams was winning her match at the Australian Open. Doug Adler, you've been down on the other side of this. Where's the tolerance?
Brian, I don't know, because, you know, with regards to my situation, it wasn't racially driven. It wasn't politically driven. It was just all about professional commentary, complimenting Venus Williams' style of play and her tactics, and about right and wrong. And obviously, ESPN acted wrongly and unfairly.
You're on ESPN 3, and you're doing the Australian Open, and you talked about how aggressive Venus Williams was playing, and you said she's playing in a guerrilla fashion. The next day, you're shocked to find out that people took that wrong, as if there was a racial component to it. And next thing you know, you're gone. After how many years of the network?
Over 10 years. I'd done the Australian Open in Wimbledon with ESPN over 10 years, and I also did the French Open with them as well.
This reminded me, and by the way, you do a great job, and you have nothing about this in your background, and everybody knows it, and people in the tennis community back you on that. And Venus Williams didn't say you should be fired at all. But I want to bring you back to, remember Alvin Garrett on Monday Night Football, and Howard Cosell was the color commentator? He was one of the smaller wide receivers, the Smurfs with the Redskins, and he jumped up and made an incredible catch, and Howard Cosell said, look at that little monkey, grab that ball, and he says, like I did with my grandchildren. Howard Cosell was never racist. One of his tightest friends and greatest confidants was Muhammad Ali, but yet he was dragged through the mud there, didn't lose his job. You did.
Well, I know that affected Cosell in a very negative way, and as with myself, I had a heart attack following the firing. I had to go on Twitter and defend myself. And Brian, what I never could quite understand, and I don't understand, is I had the relationship with ESPN. I had none of this in my background at all, furthest thing away from me. And ESPN bowed down to Twitter and social media who knew nothing about me. How could they do that? How could they not do their due diligence and stick up for me? If my name were John McEnroe or Martina Navratilova, this never would have happened.
But yet Mike Ditka did eventually lose his job. And yet Kurt Schilling immediately lost his job. And sadly, do you think politics plays a role in that, even though this is slightly different?
I'd hate to think that that's the case. I don't even want to make an assumption because, a lot of people made assumptions about me, and they didn't know the first thing about me, so they were wrong. So I just don't get it. It doesn't make any sense, particularly when the people at ESPN and my colleagues said they knew exactly what I meant and what I was referring to as a compliment to Venus's style of play.
So do you think it's corporate America? Do you think it's sponsors putting pressure on corporations like Disney that own ESPN that say, make the change, I'm seeing the backlash on my products and advertisers, my bottom line's affected, I don't care about the future of one sportscaster who happens to be great at calling tennis and other sports?
That would be really sad if that be the case. I mean, it's certainly a culture that's being manifested over at ESPN. And for someone like myself, you wonder where the loyalty is. I'm a professional, and ESPN is listening to amateurs. It just doesn't make any sense. And that's why I'm in a lawsuit.
Right.
Where else can I go to get my name back, to be cleared as a racist, and get my career back? This is the career I love. It's my passion. I was working at another job in my early 40s, and I gave that up. I was making a bunch of money to pursue my passion, and it worked out great. And look at where I am today.
Well, Doug, your fight is a fight for a lot of people, so people support you, and most of all, your family and friends know you. So don't let it get to don't let it get to who you are, and keep fighting back and coming on shows like this.
Brian, a pleasure to meet you. I think you do a wonderful job, and thank you for the opportunity to present my side.
All right.